Hello, and welcome to 1 in 20. I'm Liam, and today we're going to be continuing on with our series of help videos, squeezing down all those pesky rules and putting them into bite-sized chunks for you to digest. Without further ado, let's get on with today's show. And we're rolling. So, we've talked about how the game works and who's involved. We have our characters and our dungeon master. Once the dungeon master's ready to go, all that's left for you to do is create your character. Now, ability scores are the backbone of basically everything characters do. They determine what we're good and bad at. And these are split down into 6 main categories: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Now, we'll go through about what each of these do, but the main thing to remember is that the higher the score, the better you are in that area. So first we'll talk about strength, and quite literally, it's how strong you are. We use this stat for athletics, such as climbing and swimming. It also determines how much we can lift and carry. It's also very important for strong characters. If you're going to be a character that's always in the melee swinging a large sword around, then you're going to want some strength. It allows you to hit them better and hit them for more damage, which is always fun. Next, we're going to talk about dexterity. So for dexterity, we use this firstly for how hard you are to hit. It's very important for characters with less health to have a high dexterity so they get hit less. We also use it to apply to stealth, sleight of hand, and acrobatics. These things are good for rogues and monks, the characters that need to sneak around or steal things. It's also very important for ranged attacks. So if you plan to shoot a bow or even a sling, then dexterity is going to need to be high. Third, we have constitution. Constitution is how hearty we are, how much stamina we have, how good are you at resisting disease or fighting away poisons. Now, we also use this for hit points, our health. So in actual fact, this stat's pretty important for nearly all the classes. Next is intelligence. Again, this is one that sort of does what it says on the tin. We use this for how good you are at recalling information and how many books you've read. For skills such as arcana, religion, nature, and history, all things that revolve around gaining more information about the world that surrounds you and what you see. It's also very important for wizards who use their spells through long hours of study, researching and practicing their spells and incantations to a degree of memorizing them. The next ability score is wisdom. Wisdom represents how in tune with our surroundings and the rest of the world we are. It helps us determine when we're being lied to, as well as finding tracks in the dirt to search other creatures out. It can be quite important for clerics and druids, whose spellcasting and abilities tend to come from a natural attunement with the world around them or the gods above. Now, the intelligence and wisdom can sometimes get confused, and we will go over that at a later date. Try to separate them in the thoughts of one is book smarts and one is street smarts. It's not exactly as easy as that, but it's a good rule of thumb for when we first start out. And finally, we have charisma. Now, charisma relates to how charming you are, how good at seducing or lying. We use this for persuasion, deception, and intimidation. Now, some people sometimes put this to the back of their mind, thinking that how often are we going to be trying to persuade the goblins and orcs? But actually, a very clever and quick persuasion can circumvent a fight completely. Maybe you convince the guy in the bar that you only accidentally spilt the drink and you're very, very sorry and you're not going to do it again. Or maybe you manage to convince those goblins that you are definitely coming back with their food and money and then do a quick runner. Never look past the power of words. It's also very important for sorcerers and warlocks who use their magic, manipulating the arcane force through sheer willpower and focus. Now that we know what the 6 stats are, we need to roll them. So there are a few different methods of doing that, and it varies from group to group, so always ask your DM what rules he's using. We're today going to talk about the specific rule given in the book, which is rolling 4d6, 6-sided dice, and taking away the lowest number in the pile, adding up the rest, and this determines what score we get. You then jot this down for later and roll 5 more. The reason we jot that down for later is because you don't have to apply them to any stats until you know what you're going to be. For example, if you're going to be the big hulking barbarian with a greatsword, you're not going to put a low number in strength, as this is a fairly important stat for you. However, if you're the wizard, maybe you decide to dump strength, choosing to be frail and weak, relying on your cunning and magic to get by. Now, some people sometimes can shy away from a low score. However, try not to think of it as so much of a negative. Sometimes a low score can be the perfect roleplay opportunity to build on a character or make them really interesting. Maybe you're a very, very powerful, strong knight who just believes everything they're ever told. How will you ever know when the rogue is lying to you about that naughty thing he got up to last night? Or the wizard, as we spoke about, that has no strength, that can barely lift his own backpack, requiring the help from others to get by in any means of strength, swimming, climbing, but is so smart he can click his fingers and know that puzzle instantly. All is up to you when you create your character, deciding on class and race. So we'll talk about how races and classes might actually affect your ability scores at a later date. But now we're just going to focus on what the numbers actually mean. You've got your numbers. How do we turn this into something we can add to a dice? Well, we have what's called modifiers. Modifiers is a smaller number determined by the score itself. There is a handy table on page 13 of the player's handbook, which we suggest when you start out you take a look at. But I promise after a few games it'll become sort of second nature. It's not too hard a system to understand. Essentially the scores start at 10, giving you a modifier to your dice of +0. This is exactly average. You are not good, you're not bad. It leaves a lot to the dice roll. For every 2 up or down you go, this changes the modifier. So every even number on the way up, so for example 12, 14, 16 and so on to a maximum of 20, increases the bonus to the modifier by 1. So if you have a 14 in your dexterity, you get a +2 to all dexterity based things. When we're going downwards, the modifier changes on an odd number, so 9, 7, 5, etc., down to a minimum of 1. Realistically, your DM should never let you have that low, but it's up to them at the end of the day. So with all that in our character sheets, you're ready to move on to the next stages. We'll get onto that onto a next video. If you've enjoyed this video, I've been Liam Wright. If you haven't, I've been Chris Haydock. Have a nice day. Thank you for watching, and please remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when our videos are next coming out. Hope to see you all next time. Roll well.